Hello, subscribe if you would. So it's a long weekend, and myself and my girlfriend Joanne were planning what we should do, and she said we should watch some Jack Nicholson films, and I thought that's a great idea because he's my favourite actor. So we decided we'd do that, but I can't find my Jack Nicholson films because my DVDs are stacked into overhead presses. And I wasn't going to kind of root through them and stuff, but I spotted this film, A Room for Romeo Brass, a film by the Nottingham-born filmmaker Shane Meadows. And so it got me thinking, and I thought, I bet she'd love this film. And she had seen This Is England, one of his films, and I think that's all she'd seen of his work. But it got me thinking of my run this morning. Apparently we had a storm here this weekend. It wasn't a storm here where I am. It was a bit windy and a bit wet, but I was fine on my run. But I got to thinking about social realism in film and why do I like it so much. And Shane Meadows is in the kind of lineage of Mike Leigh, Ken Loach, Andrea Arnold. I'm just naming British directors at the moment, but they do excel in social realism. And I suppose because Ireland being so close to England and sharing certain cultural aspects, that I kind of I'm drawn to them. But then as I was out running this morning, I was thinking about my favourite films, and it was like There Will Be Blood is social realism, 12 Angry Men, Network, which is kind of, there's a little bit of satire in there, but again, social realism. And I would, I'd go through my list of films now. If I named all 100, 80% of them might be social realism. I've never been into fantasy films or sci-fi films. Really, there's an exception here and there, but I was speaking to Joanne about Dead Man's Shoes, which is another Shane Meadows film, is my favourite of his films, and I showed her a clip last night out of context. She hadn't seen the film. So anyway, we after my run this morning, I put on A Room for Romeo Brass, which is the film I decided to kind of talk a little bit more about this week. He in this film, it's about two young lads, and they befriend a slightly older guy, maybe 25, 26, who's very odd and kind of funny and kind of endearing in ways, but wanting to date one of the lad's sisters and all this kind of stuff that's going on. But things take a turn, and I like to do usually in Shane Meadows films, and I like to do in life in particular. But there's something, what I noticed about that film that I hadn't really noticed before after having watched it again this morning, was the overlapping conversations, which is a very Robert Altman effect. Now, Robert Altman, in a way, does his own social realism, but he's an American filmmaker who passed away a few years ago. But the idea of everyday conversations overlapping each other and one not taking importance over another unless you're in one, everything else around you kind of can be shut out usually. But I think as you're put into the film, as you're watching it, you become part of those conversations, and what you decide to cling on to is what you want to hear. And that kind of social realism is so well done in Shane Meadows. And so in the film A Room for Romeo Brass, there's always a little bit of violence in Shane Meadows. Sometimes a lot of violence in his films, but sometimes a little. And that there's always a threat of violence that hangs in the air. And I think when you focus a film on the two young boys, there is a threat of violence in young people's lives in Britain and Ireland, in American, well, I suppose in most places, but sometimes from the unexpected places. And there's elements of like bullying in it, which is kind of sits, awkwardly or horribly with me. And you feel for the young lads in the film, and I'm delighted that Joanne really liked it. Great soundtrack and all this kind of stuff, but I just couldn't help but be kind of transported into this kind of into Nottingham and the you know, I'm from Ireland, the middle of Ireland. They're from Nottingham, is obviously in the Midlands in England, and the accents are slightly different. But you pick up on how endearing the accents are. I suppose more endearing than the Athlone accent. So it was really weird. So after that run, I got in this morning and I had this kind of thing of what if we could get Dead Man's Shoes, you know? And having flicked through that little clip yesterday, I saw that there was a full copy of it on YouTube. I do have a copy, but again, it's lost in spaces somewhere with my copy of The Last Detail and 5 Easy Pieces films that I wanted, the Nicholson films that I wanted to watch, which one. So we put on a YouTube the full length Dead Man's Shoes on YouTube, and I kind of sad that I left the out of context that clip out of context, because you know it would have been nice for her to see the whole thing together. But anyway, she really liked it, but it's very difficult to watch. And I almost forgot how difficult. It's probably the fourth time I've watched it. And there was a couple of little bits in it that I picked up that I hadn't picked up before, that had left little clues as to what was going on in the story. Easy to say in hindsight, I know that, but I had never picked it up in my previous times of rewatching it. But again, Paddy Considine is in that film. He plays a completely different role, but there's, again, violence, you know, within the framework of the film, and everyday monotony of drinking tea and, you know, hanging around with your mates and like doing drugs if that's what you decide to do. But like even small time gangsters that we know, you know, that you will see in your town or your city. And I think that whole thing about the realism is when done well is exceptional, in the sense of you can be excuse me, you can be in a certain place in your life and feeling like brilliant, feeling terrible, whatever you might feel, you know, all the mixed emotions we can have. But you can be drawn into this world for an hour and a half and really feel it, like, and really have to sit in it. And maybe it's a form of good escapism, and maybe it's a form of bad escapism, and that, you know, not that you want to be taken down a notch or two, but like there is well, maybe there's something within me. I shouldn't speak for anyone else, because poor Joanne had a tough time watching Dead Man's Shoes. But sometimes to watch that kind of grimness and violence and really horrible moments on screen can make you feel like not good, but like make you appreciate that what you have in your life just as much as, you know, watching the beautiful things in film and things that other people have and receive and that you don't quite get or receive, and you can feel bad from it too. That doesn't mean you should avoid tough films. But, you know, A Room for Romeo Brass and Dead Man's Shoes, and a lot of, you know, This Is England, a lot of Shane Meadows movies and TV shows. The Virtues is another one, that's a TV show that's really great. They take you to a certain time and place that Shane Meadows existed in, but then he makes it universal, you know, him and the screenwriters and the actors and everybody else, and he's beautiful at framing things. But also, I think of the first 25 minutes of There Will Be Blood, when Daniel Day-Lewis's character, Daniel Plainview, is going out looking for his oil, and he falls down the well, and he gets out of the trench, and he breaks his leg, and it's just like a silent film, like a really dark Buster Keaton film or something. But you're on that kind of journey with him of the struggle of, you know, going out and finding or trying to find that something that will make your life be lifted up, but only to be knocked down a literal well in his case, and break your leg and have to drag your way back there. So like, you know, and you know, I'm thinking of 12 Angry Men as another example of what would you do in certain positions of power, and how would you deal with them. And it gets you asking questions more in social realism than it would in, like, for me, Lord of the Rings, you know, of like, what would you do with the ring? I couldn't give two shits. I know, you know, everything has its place, obviously. I'm making light of Lord of the Rings, but like, you know, I hope people understand what I mean. It's like the kind of thing of like, I can put myself in those positions because they're actually events that could happen. and they tell you a story, and they tell you those tales of other people's lives and other people's existence, and those towns and cities that you feel that are so far away, but they're like not quite as different as we think they are. And you know, the grass isn't always greener, and you know what the terrible things and the beautiful things that are happening outside there now are happening every other place. And sometimes it takes a filmmaker like Shane Meadows to point his camera at it and write some words down on a page to kind of make you go, oh, so we're not to sound, you know, philosophical, but like we're not so different after all of us, you know. So yeah, if you haven't seen A Room for Romeo Brass, there is a reason there's a pair of Y fronts on it, but I won't spoil that for you. If you haven't seen that, or Dead Man's Shoes, or any of his films, you should go watch them. And you know, look, you know, if you haven't written down the names of the people I listed, go back and get them, and go watch Andrea Arnold's films, and whoever else I said, and watch this social realism for the joys that are within. But yeah, that's my little take this evening. Yeah, subscribe and like and all that. Thanks very much. Bye.